friends, neighbors, my fellow Singaporeans. Good evening. It is a great pleasure to be back here in Pasir Congo GRC. And I must thank my comrades who are standing for election in this GRC for allowing me to share the stage with them. As a resident, I have been following the campaign here very closely. And I know that the team that has been working very hard to win every vote. Now, having worked closely with DPM Teo, Selak, Penny in the last parliament, and having to come to know Janil, Tianpo, and Zainal in the last couple of months, I can say with full confidence that they are the best team for Pasir Congo GRC. And as a resident of this area, I will give them my vote. And I urge all of you to also give them their vote. The strength of the PAP's plans for Singapore is that they are concrete, sensible, and workable. Now, this is not the same with some of our opponents' plans. And this is very clear if you study what the PAP has put forward in their national and in their local manifestos, and compare them with the manifestos of the opposition parties. Now, for example, in the constituency where I am contesting in Joo Chiat SMC, my opponent from the Workers' Party, Mr. Yee, did not seem to have any clear plan or direction for the constituency at the onset. And the manifesto that he put out did not contain any details of what he had planned for Joo Chiat. In fact, the Workers' Party local manifesto for Joo Chiat essentially contained just two things: a message from Mr. Loh Tia Kiang on their plans on how they are going to achieve a first world parliament, and Mr. Yee's CV. Now that was it. Nothing in there was about how they would develop the environment and the property in Joo Chiat. Now I was a bit confused for a moment after receiving a copy of the Workers' Party Joo Chiat manifesto, because I had just seen a copy of the Workers' Party alternate GRC manifesto. They look exactly the same. Just change alternate to Joo Chiat on the cover page of the manifesto and change the CVs, and they are exactly the same. I almost thought that I was contesting against Mr. Loh Tia Kiang in alternate GRC. Now this is in stark contrast with the local manifestos which PAP candidates put out, which contain concrete details on the plans that we have for the constituencies that we are contesting in. It was only later, in response to requests from residents, that Mr. Yee released details of his plans for Joo Chiat in his blog. Now even then, he went on to say that he wanted to start from a blank sheet of paper, and that as an entrepreneur, he was used to doing this. Now Mr. Yee is without doubt a successful entrepreneur, and I'm sure that his experiences in the business world may have given him a false confidence that he can be a successful MP without setting out concrete plans at the start. But he is wrong. Now let me tell you why. When you start out on a business idea with a blank piece of paper and you write your business plan, you can either strike it very rich or you can fail dismally. For every successful business, there are countless others which may have been not so successful or complete failures. If you are an entrepreneur, you take risks, and if you succeed, your family and your investors will be very happy for you. Now on the other hand, if you fail, and you end up making only a very small group of people upset, but that is it. As an MP, if you are starting out with no plans, now any failure because of your blank sheet could potentially affect the well-being of all your constituents. In this case, in the case of Joo Chiat, 22,000 voters' lives would be upset because you have failed to have a plan. Now this is not the case with the PAP, where we plan to succeed and to ensure that the programs we put in place are workable. At the local level, we ensure that we are on the ground, taking feedback from residents and responding to those needs. But that is not enough for us. We are also proactive with programs that will be beneficial to the community. And we don't wait for residents to complain before we act. On national issues that affect our residents, we will be their voice, not only in Parliament, but outside of Parliament. Now, as far as upgrading is concerned, Mr. Yee claims that as a largely private housing estate, Joo Chiat has little use for upgrading. And that from his walkabouts and his conversations with residents, that they are more interested in having alternative voices in Parliament, an alternative to the voices of the PAP. Now, I don't know if Mr. Yee and I have been walking in different parts of Joo Chiat, but in the walkabouts which I have done, residents seem more interested and concerned about upgrading old drains and pathways and are looking for solutions to the parking problems that is quite serious in Joo Chiat. And the PAP MPs in Joo Chiat have acted in accordance with residents' aspirations by having estate upgrading programs and interim estate upgrading programs for various neighbourhoods in the constituency. So when Mr. Yee gave his statement, which was reported in today's media, now I really started wondering if he was having an alternative first world reality. Now I want to explain why I think this is very critical for a place like Joo Chiat. When someone on a national platform and who is a local resident is quoted as saying that upgrading is not necessary, it is very, very damaging. Now this is because each PAP MP is always fighting to get his or her residents to the front of the upgrading queue. And when someone who should have known better say that we don't need upgrading and that the new parks that we built are mainly for mates and their boyfriends, whoever wins, whether it is the PAP or the opposition, is going to have an uphill task trying to convince the authorities that our place need upgrading. Mr. Yee may or may not win the election, but his opinion has already done damage to the residents of Joo Chiat, whose areas are in desperate need of upgrading. If I am elected as MP for Joo Chiat, I will have to deal with the consequences of that irresponsible statement, while Mr. Yee will continue life as usual in his private condominium. If Mr. Yee is elected, from his blank sheet of paper later on he finds out that upgrading is needed, he will have a tough time convincing the authorities why he now has changed his position. So I accept that in the hustings people will say all kinds of things to gain political ground, but I urge Mr. Yee, please do not say anything which is going to harm the interests of the people you are looking to represent. I am therefore going to take this opportunity to apologize to the residents of Joo Chiat on behalf of Mr. Yee and the Workers' Party if his irresponsible statement has any enduring impact. But let me say this clearly so that there is no ambiguity as to where I stand on this issue. I believe that there is a whole lot that we can do to upgrade the physical environment in Joo Chiat, and that if I am elected as the MP for Joo Chiat, I will do my very best to ensure that the government is convinced that this is indeed the case, that residents do want upgrading and that the estate needs upgrading. Now I want to make Joo Chiat a better home and a better place for all residents. On national issues that affect the my constituencies, such as the cost of living, I will be trying my best to convince the government that there are residents living in private property that also need assistance. The Workers' Party has also said that in Joo Chiat, residents can take care of themselves. Now I think Mr. Yee is assuming that all residents, because they live in private property, are well off. Now he forgets, or perhaps conveniently ignores, two things. One, there is a small cluster of HDB blocks in Joo Chiat, and residents in those blocks do not enjoy the same luxuries as those living in private housing. Now second, there are those who live in private housing, but are in need of financial assistance. Now, during my walkabouts, I've come across many retirees and senior citizens living in private property with no income, but living off their savings and their pensions. Now, I am committed to looking for solutions to help those residents as well. Now, overall, the message I get from the Workers' Party is that if they are voted into Joo Chiat, residents there will left to defend for themselves. With aging drains and infrastructure, while the Workers' Party pursues its agenda of a first world parliament. Now, if you have relatives and friends in Joo Chiat, please urge them to think carefully about this. Before I end my speech, since Mr. Yee had referred to PAP candidates, I suppose including me, as old horses, lao bear. Now, I want to end my speech tonight with a story about two horses, and both are race horses. One which is older, but is much more successful in winning races because it is more experienced and because it always has a plan before every race. And the other is a younger horse who is often distracted from the finishing line because he keeps on dreaming of racing in a first world racetrack. And it runs all over the place because it hasn't got a plan, only a blank sheet of paper. And if I were a hunter and I had to back a horse to win the next race, now which would you put your money on? The young horse without a plan who runs all over the place, or the old horse who always has a plan? Once again I ask you, the young horse or the lao bear? Now, I don't know about you, but I would place my bets on the one which has a track record of winning races and providing sound returns on the investment. And I hope you too will feel the same. Thank you.